assignment and go out and do it with some aggressiveness.
Why is it that some people constantly manage to reach heights others can only dream of?
Very short and very to the point. Let me read it. It says, we regret that Saddam Hussein took no action before the noon deadline to comply with the United Nations resolutions. We remain determined. We're seeing at the United Nations that it is indeed a very sober statement indeed, one that does not leave a great deal of room for optimism, with President Bush saying that he regrets that Saddam Hussein has not fulfilled his end of the U.S. announced ultimatum, and that repeating once again from the President's comments, military action continues on schedule and according to plan. Molly?
CNN's Frank Sesno reporting for us live from the White House.
So much of what is happening today depends on the decisions being made in Baghdad, Iraq. We go back to Baghdad right now, and Peter Arnett. Peter. Yes, the President's statement will not come as a surprise to people here at the hotel and officials have met, and the people of Baghdad. There's been no feeling of optimism here, certainly today. Yesterday, just a glimmer, but today, the people of Baghdad are not optimistic. Right now, the skies are quiet. The stars are out. There's nothing up there that we can see other than the stars. However, early in the evening, as the ultimatum did come about an hour and 15 minutes ago, the people of Baghdad were well reminded that their government had not agreed to the ultimatum because the bombs were crashing down in the city and around this hotel. The reaction time in Baghdad is very limited. We do not have media here. We don't have access to government spokesmen very readily. We are aware of the comments about Tariq Aziz's efforts maybe in Moscow, a conversation possibly with Mikhail Gorbachev. The only indicator we can get here of what the Iraqi government is doing is from Baghdad radio, and they haven't commented anything substantial on what is going on at the UN or discussions today. The other aspect we can tell you about, as we have reported earlier, is the activity of Allied warplanes in the area. It is currently quiet here now, but we do expect more raids later in the evening. This is Peter Arnett, CNN, reporting live from Baghdad.
All right, Peter. CNN's Wolf Blitzer is standing by live at the Pentagon now. Wolf, President Bush just moments ago issued a statement saying that military action continues on schedule and according to plan.
That's right, Molly. And here at the Pentagon, officials say the game plan is moving ahead. The war continues with absolutely no let-up in the airstrikes. In fact, there has been an acceleration in those airstrikes as all signs point to a ground war that could be imminent. We are told here that the flurry of last-minute diplomatic activity at the United Nations is now viewed, and I'll give a quote, is now viewed as a last-minute false alarm, in the sense that at least senior officials here at the Pentagon are not expecting any Iraqi decision to accept President Bush's conditions for resolving this war with some sort of Iraqi withdrawal over the next 7 days. There's a sense that the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, Ambassador Tom Pickering, went through the motions of receiving this last-minute communique from the Soviets and perhaps from some other diplomatic missions there. But officials here at the Pentagon are not counting on some sort of diplomatic breakthrough to avert what is certainly, at least appears to be, from all signs here at the Pentagon, an imminent ground war. We also have not been able to confirm a report that the commander of Operation Desert Storm, General Norman Schwarzkopf, has already received from Washington, from President Bush, a green light so that the U.S. command and the other allies in Saudi Arabia would presumably have some sort of window over the next few hours or days to undertake a formal start of the ground war. In fact, one senior Pentagon source told us only a few moments ago that he did not believe that General Schwarzkopf has already received that green light, although it could happen. It could happen almost at any moment. I'm sure that officials are awaiting final instructions from President Bush, who is at Camp David. The Secretary of Defense, Dick Cheney, is here in the Pentagon, we are told, in his office, and the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Colin Powell, as of a few moments ago, is at his home in Fort Myer, Virginia, which is only about 5 minutes away from here. All signs are, though, that the preparations, the final last-minute preparations for the ground war have been accelerated with the U.S. and other allied airstrikes and barrages from artillery, certainly from the sea, continuing, trying to establish a path so that the ground forces would be able to undertake their game plan. We have no, of course, knowledge of the exact game plan, but all indications are, at least from sources here at the Pentagon, that it will be massive, it will be very, very speedy, with thousands of tanks and literally hundreds of thousands of U.S. and other allied troops. Wolf Blitzer, CNN, reporting live from the Pentagon.
Thank you, Wolf. The Pentagon will be holding a briefing at 3 o'clock Eastern Time, and of course CNN will carry that live for you. Nowhere else in the world are they listening and watching all the diplomatic moves taking place here today and around the world at the United Nations than in Saudi Arabia. And Charles Jaco is standing by live. Charles.
Watching and listening with a great deal of interest indeed, but the general consensus has been here all along that, as Wolf Blitzer said from the Pentagon, that this may be a false alarm. Preparations have been going on for weeks. In the last 24 hours, the airstrikes have picked up. Transport planes and vehicles are clogging both the aerial pathways and the ground roads heading north. All indications are that U.S. and allied forces are ready for some sort of massive and simultaneous push into Iraq and Kuwait. Exactly when that might come, exactly where the strike might be, we don't know, but the indications we're getting here agree with those of Wolf Blitzer's at the Pentagon, that it would be massive and it would be all at once. Now, while all this is going on, U.S. officials are claiming Iraqi troops are now committing fresh atrocities in Kuwait.
There seems to be a systematic campaign of execution, particularly people that they may have tortured previously, that they're sort of destroying the evidence, I guess, for lack of a better term. And then there's a systematic campaign of grabbing Kuwaitis along the streets and byways of Kuwait City and executing them, summarily executing them. Beyond that, I wouldn't want to comment. Well, we've kind of had indications of it through Kuwaiti resistance reports and just other collection means, but it seems to have become endemic now in the last 24 to 48 hours.
Coincides with the policy of setting these wells on fire?
I'm not sure if I would leap to that conclusion that they're coincidental, but I think probably a terror campaign. This is terrorism at its finest hour, so I think you could probably make that connection.
And right now, the preparations do continue with a lot of air traffic, a lot of ground traffic, and troops up at the front, as we understand, on a hair-trigger alert. But again, this could go on for several days. We're not quite sure what's happened next, although it's about 9:15 Baghdad and Saudi Arabia time. We'll have to see when a ground war might start. Charles Jaco, CNN, reporting live from Saudi Arabia.
All right, Jaco, thank you for that. CNN Moscow Bureau Chief Steve Hurst is covering the diplomatic front in Moscow, and in a moment we'll be talking with him live.
Of this luxury car is $37,000. The average cost of the American home is $134,000.
We regret that Saddam Hussein took no action before the noon deadline to comply with the United Nations resolutions. We remain determined to fulfill the UN resolutions. Military action continues on schedule and according to plan. The end of that presidential quote. President Bush remains at Camp David today.
Watching all the diplomatic moves from the vantage point of Moscow is CNN's Steve Hurst. Steve.
Dave, a couple of those diplomatic puzzle pieces are still missing, and perhaps more that we don't even know about. One we hope to hear about later tonight when presidential spokesman Vitaly Ignatенko is supposed to give us a briefing, and we hope to hear at that time what was said in a telephone conversation between President Gorbachev and President Bush. It apparently took place just moments before the deadline expired. We also are wondering now what exactly transpired in a last-minute telephone conversation between Mr. Bush and Iraqi Foreign Minister Tariq Aziz just as he was about to leave the Soviet capital at mid-afternoon. It appears that if Mr. Aziz is going to give Mr. Gorbachev some sort of answer, as there has been speculation and reports from the UN,
that he had accepted the U.S. plan. He doesn't have any confirmation or any word whatsoever about that, however, that word might have been given by telephone to Mr. Gorbachev during that last-minute conversation. We do know that Mr. Gorbachev, after intensive negotiations soon after Tariq Aziz arrived in the Soviet capital, had pretty much distanced himself from the Iraqi foreign minister, deciding instead to place his diplomatic efforts outside the country. He made a series of telephone calls today to leaders of the Allied coalition. He was also talking to President Bush, as we reported. So we're waiting for word from the Kremlin tonight to see what transpired in a telephone conversation between President Gorbachev and President Bush, perhaps a last-minute plea by the Soviet president asking Mr. Bush to perhaps prolong that deadline. We've heard from Washington, however, the deadline has passed and all military efforts are going forward. Dave, I'm Steve Hurst, reporting live to CNN in Moscow.
Okay, Steve, thanks very much for that. Just before the Washington deadline of noon Eastern approached today, Iraq launched another Scud missile attack on Israel. The CNN's Richard Roth is standing by live in Tel Aviv now. Richard?
Yes, the all clear has been given, but earlier this evening there was a Scud attack. Saturday is definitely the favorite time for Iraqi Scud missile launches. Every Saturday since the Gulf War began, there's been a Scud attack. Now, just 7 minutes before that U.S. deadline expired, there were sirens roaring all across Israel. It was another missile attack by Iraq. Several minutes later, people in Jerusalem could see a missile. And moments later, that missile came down somewhere in central Israel. This is what people in Jerusalem saw. And then in central Israel, the missile appeared to be disintegrating on the way down, which is a pattern that's occurred in recent launches from western Iraq. There were no injuries reported from this latest assault, which is a 30-stomach missile fired at Israel by Iraq. And many people ignored this latest attack and the sirens. They stayed in their cafes in Tel Aviv and in other cities, and they preferred to go about their business, and then the sirens went off. They enjoyed their Sabbath earlier in the day during the sun. The beaches were jammed. The Israeli government and its citizens, though, are very worried that Saddam Hussein will wriggle out of this Gulf crisis. They want him overthrown or dead.
The people of Tel Aviv have had months to wonder whether Saddam pulls out of Kuwait. So more deadlines and ultimatums in the Middle East were not enough to keep them indoors. Not with a spectacular Mediterranean day at the beachfront awaiting them.
Let's be fair, Americans can hold you to ransom, and it's difficult to run out there, tell that guy to say something else.
There was overwhelming support for the White House position.
I believe, and I hope, that whatever President Bush with the coalition are going to do will be right. We trust them.
Under the blue sky, the people agree on what they would like to see happen.
I wish that the war continues, because otherwise it will be very dangerous to Israel and to all the Gulf nations if Saddam stays.
We must finish with Saddam, because Saddam is a very bad man. He's the picture of Hitler. Just the picture of Hitler.
They speak with a growing sense of security, bolstered by the presence of U.S. Patriot missile crews. But the threat of a chemical weapons attack is still there, and the possibility that Saddam would remain in power leaves Israelis to hope for a complete U.S. Allied victory.
This is a very bad